What's going on, guys? Welcome back to NolanTCG, and we are back here today for another deck profile, and it is for Dragonmaids. So, I haven't actually messed around with Dragonmaids for a little while now, and I just decided to, crack it out. I don't know why, I just kind of got this little bit of inspiration. Maybe it was playing Extrav in Frogs, and I guess moved over to here. It's because it's another Extrav deck. But, yeah. Ultimately, I'm really happy with the way that it kind of plays. This is different to the way I traditionally build my Dragonmaid lists. Not, a massive difference, but, yeah. It's still, it's its own unique thing. But before we get started, as always, please do remember to drop down below and hit the subscribe button if you are new here, because we are always happy to have new people. And let's get on into the deck profile for this one. Okay, so starting us off, we have 3 copies. Wait, let's fix these up. I always stuff up the first ones, but it's 3 copies of Chamber Dragonmaid. Is still your primary normal summon for the deck. You do get that search for the spell or trap card. Hopefully it does then lead into the fusion plays and stuff like that you do need. But yeah, ultimately, primary normal summon, gets you the resources, keep going. Your secondary normal summon, which is 3 copies of Parlor Dragonmaid, effectively does the same thing as Chamber. The 2 spell, the 2 spell and trap cards you want to access are primarily graveyard-based spell or trap cards. You have the fusion that bounces back, and then you have the trap, which allows you to extend. Then we've got 2 copies of Kitchen Dragonmaid. Normally in my traditional list I do play 3 of this. We are down to 2 now because it's not that much value anymore. It doesn't freely get you to the play with the fusion, just off its own summon. So cutting it to 2 is good. As well as Nurse. So normally I've played 2 Nurse. I've cut Nurse down to 1 now, just simply because it's good in the mid game, but it's not good at the start. You don't want to open a copy of Nurse or 2. So primarily 1 Nurse, 2 Kitchen. Then for the dragons themselves, I have again massively slimmed down this lineup. So now we have 2 copies of Ernest. I still couldn't bring myself to just play 1 Ernest. 2 Ernest is just so good, the fact that it does allow you to freely extend. Then we've got 1 copy of Lawpaw. If this card was a quick effect, this deck would be meta. I always say that, but yeah. Why was this not a quick effect? If only. The other one, make both of them a quick effect. That would have been great. But yeah, we're playing 1 copy of this, and then we're playing 1 copy of Tinnek. Tinnek is, of course, your Dragoon out, attack over, discard, big damage. Then we've got 3 copies of Black Metal Dragon. This is, again, another great normal summon for the deck. It does end you with 9 primary normal summons, or 9 good normal summons. Overall, that's a good number. You always want to see 1 of them. So, Black Metal, you've got the Chamber, and you've got the Parlor. Then we've got, of course, the card you go in off that, which is a Red Eyes Darkness Metal Dragon. Again, freely extend. Can get you the cards out of your hand or your graveyard. You keep playing. Then we've got 3 copies of Ash Blossom and Joyous Springs following that up as we get into the hand traps. You can always change hand traps as to whatever your locals requires, but 3 copies of Ash is just the most basic staple. Blindly hits everything, pretty much. A new card that I'm going to start playing a lot more at the moment is 3 copies of Ghost Spell. It just hits a lot of stuff in the meta right now, so Ghost Spell, really, really good. Then we are playing 3 copies of Dragonmaid Hospitality. If you do want to clear a bit of room in this main deck, this can be 2. It is not the best card in the world to draw in multiples, so you only really ever want to see 1. But it does provide so much value when you see the 1 that I felt as though 3 was correct, but you can trim it to 2. Then we play 2 copies of Changeover. You need this card to play, which is why we are playing 2 of it. In the past, this card getting negated is bad. If your opponent knows what they're doing and they're playing something like Invoked, they will hold the negate for this with the Macabre, and then once this is banished, you're kind of stuffed unless you have 2 in deck. So playing 2 copies of Changeover I just felt was correct. Then we've got 3 copies of Extrav following that up, because of course we are an Extrav build. You just play 3 copies of Extrav. 2 copies of World Legacy Guard Dragon. Again, really, really good, really powerful card, but the fact that it is a hard once per turn, you do not want to see a lot of it. So, 2 copies of World Legacy Guard Dragon, and 1 copy of Monster Reborn, which is essentially your sub out. Does the same thing, it's just Monster Reborn, not once per turn, so you can afford to get both. Then, into the traps, we've got 3 copies of this card, which is insane. This was the best card in Rise of the Duelist. Mark my words. Like, still. It's not all those other great cards. It's this. 3 copies of Dragonmaid Tidying. Allows you to freely expend from the graveyard. Then we've got 3 copies of Imperm, rounding out our main deck as always, as we knock everything over. Something I did originally want to flirt with when I was building this list, I ultimately just ran out of space, was to look at playing 3 copies of Foolish Burial Goods. I did feel as though it, like, was a little unnecessary, but it did freely allow you to, like, have your normal summon negated and you can keep playing, which is why I felt like it was good. But ultimately, there wasn't the space to go with it unless you want to trim down the hand trap lineup, so that is something you can consider. Okay, next off we have the extra deck, and of course, starting us off is 3 copies of Dragonmaid Shiu, the primary negation. Card is really, really good. It gives you that free negate, then you shuffle it back, and then you can start threatening board with House and try and get some pops involved. Then of course, we do have 3 copies of House. Do remember when your House is summoned with your Shiu, it cannot be reborn from the graveyard, so once you run out of your House resources, you are typically out of resources. So, like, be careful. Just be careful with your houses. Then we've got 1 copy of Pisty and 1 copy of LP as your guard dragons. Given that this is an extra build, you're not super stressed about banishing these guys. They're not, like, the most reliant thing in the world in this deck. We do also have 2 copies of Striker Dragon. This is something that is a little bit more important. You do want to be able to convert your cards into a Striker Dragon to give you the dragon on board, so that you can set up with a Hieratic Seal. So, the 2 copies of Striker Dragon is pretty good. Then we've got 2 copies of Almirage. You can switch one of these for a 3rd Striker Dragon if you wish. Alternatively, you can switch it for more copies of Hieratic Seal of Heavenly Spheres. I just don't have 3 copies of Hieratic Seal of Heavenly Spheres. In fact, I only had 1. So I am going to try and pick those up. You would definitely switch one of these for a Hieratic Seal. You can consider cutting both of them if you wish, given that, like, everything can be turned into a Striker Dragon. I just felt as though having that little bit of variety, the effect can come up. Just playing 2 of it for now was fine. Then we've got 1 copy of the Hieratic Seal of Heavenly Spheres. You will increase the ratio on this if you can. If you have access to more, do put in more. We've got 1 copy of Nightmare Phoenix, because we do need some form of spell and trap removal in the current format, so a Nightmare Phoenix is the way to go. And 1 copy of Borrelsword Dragon I have rounding out the main deck. This just threatens a bunch of damage. You can typically, like, get to it on your turn, like, 3 to 5 board, so 1 copy of Borrelsword Dragon into the deck is here. But that will wrap us up here for the deck profile for this one. So as always, if you do have any recommendations or things you would change, do remember to comment those guys down below. Jump on to the Merry Brickmas video if you do want to enter in to win, I believe it was a Hobby League Cyber Jar that we're giving away, so do check that out. We're going to have our, like, YCS Sydney 2021 video coming up in the 2nd week of January, so do keep an eye out for that. But as always, I've been Ben from NolanTCG, and have a good afternoon, everybody.